Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Josh Kraushaar, editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider, joins me. Josh, how bad is the crack up in the Democratic Party?
Well, look, I think Chuck Schumer is at his low point politically during his decades-long congressional career. It's kind of remarkable. This is the guy who didn't want to he didn't went against the base in supporting the budget earlier this year, got hell politically from the base for that. Now he closes the government down for 40 plus days, is still getting hell from the base because he couldn't win that fight. And the opposition who tries to use the government shutdown as leverage to get whatever they want has never won that fight historically. So you can't win anything if you're Chuck Schumer. I think, Hugh, that he is facing a real likelihood of facing a serious challenge in the 2028 primary. And I think the betting money is that he may actually step down before at the end of his term this year, or at the end of his term before 2028.
I think there's an old phrase in investing: do not try and catch a falling knife, which means if you think a stock is falling and that this is the right time to get in, you're wrong. It's going to fall further. And Chuck Schumer is going to fall further. I don't think he's going to run again. This is a disaster for him.
Well, Hugh, a good contrast in looking at leadership in the Senate, you can look at Mitch McConnell, who took a lot of, hell from his base, but did what he thought was the right thing, and ultimately, I think, went out in terms of on the policy side. But he took the heat. He actually stood up for what he believed in, and he was not. You could see some of his polls. The right wing base turned on him a little bit, but he still got reelected. He still won his primaries, and he did it. He didn't back down substantively. Chuck Schumer, behind the scenes was trying to get the government back open, but he didn't have the principle to actually vote that way. So that just shows how scared he is of the Democratic Party base, and frankly, how scared he is of where the Democratic Party is moving. And it's moving away from the more mainstream brand of Democratic Party politics into a much more activist, strain.
I want to pause here and underline what you just said. Leader McConnell is a genius. His book, The Long Game, is one I would recommend any youngster on Capitol Hill read. And he always played the long game with two things in mind: the Constitution, the judges who would actually read it and apply it. He always was against campaign finance laws because he thought they violated the First Amendment. He stuck with that fight, McCain versus FEC. He won. And as leader, he played hardball to get the courts back on a course of originalism, and he won. I mean, he's a major figure in America because he knew what he stood for. Chuck Schumer stood for Chuck Schumer, I think.
Well, Chuck Schumer is much more of a day trader, much more reactive to the
Yes.
political win of the moment, which is, sometimes you see this with some of the recruits he goes after in Senate races. Like, look, maybe it'll pay off, but a lot of the folks he goes after are the more established candidates who are looking good in the moment but don't last, the test of time politically. And I think that's also true of his legislative tactics and strategy.
Well, part of it is just generational, right? They've got to pass the baton. The Republicans are doing that better, not just with Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, but Senators Cotton and Schmidt, and we got a Cruz. We got a deep, deep bench. We've got Elise Stefanik, might be the next governor of New York. I don't know that the Democrats can pass the baton without a massacre at the OK political corral between AOC and Schumer, unless he steps down.
Well, and the difference, I think, between the parties is that the younger voters, younger elected officials in the Democratic Party are also predominantly the left wing. Not always, but a lot of the AOC is sort of representative of this younger generation. So a lot of like what you see in a lot of these elections, Democratic primaries, is that you almost need to run the old guard candidate because they're the only one who's well known, and the only way that anyone else can get attention is if they're socialist, if they're so far to the left that they can go viral on social media. And it's created this really difficult conundrum because the only candidates that can go viral are the ones that are too far left to win swing states and swing districts. And it's a real conundrum for the party. Chuck Schumer it doesn't have any good answers, but frankly, I don't think a lot of Democrats have good answers for how to get their party back.
I hate to say this to my audience on AM 1300, The Answer in Seattle, but they are so screwed, Josh. Katie Wilson is so left wing, and she wants to tax everything, including a digital services tax, a local death tax, a local capital gains tax. She's anti-Israel. Have you read up on her?
Oh yeah, I think we reported on the socialist candidates in addition to Mamdani, who were running for mayor. They went 2-1 in the big cities. Seattle and New York voted for socialists. Minneapolis ended up narrowly voting for the incumbent, more liberal mayor and Jacob Fry. But
Jacob Fry, yeah.
I mean, we analyzed the result. I mean, about 50 in the big city races in Democrat in general elections, about 50%, either a little bit under or a little bit over, the vote went for the socialist candidates. That's the Democratic base. That's the younger, progressive socialist base right now, and it's about almost 50% of the vote in these big city elections.
How did American education fail to teach the history of the failure? And I don't mean one time or 3 times, but 50 times socialism has failed. How did we not teach that?
That we could talk about that for the whole show, Hugh. Look, I think one big thing is that people, you learn after a couple generations of people who lived through the horrors of socialism, frankly, who lived through the horrors of fascism. That generation, the greatest generation, we're losing them. And I think that sadly people don't read their history, and we're learning. We may have to learn our lessons that were so hard fought over the years all over again if the trends are the same as they look right now.
I'm not predicting. I know for a fact it will not work. It cannot work. You cannot do rent control without destroying the housing stock of a city. If you do a local wealth tax, I don't think it's constitutional, but if she did, people would flee. Do they not get basic economics 101?
Well, look, I mean, Seattle elected Bruce Harrell, the incumbent mayor, because of the chaos in Seattle during, that was when they had the CHOP movement and the
Yep.
revolution, street chaos in downtown Seattle. They elected a moderate to get rid of that, and he did. He was fairly effective. But they don't remember that. That's ancient history now, and they're trying to go back to the old ways of doing things, and they don't remember how bad it was not that long ago.
It's going to come back, and she has never run anything except a not-for-profit, and oh my goodness, that city. Josh Kraushaar, always good to see you. Follow Josh on X at Josh Kraushaar. There's Seattle right there if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. She'll probably take down the spiral, or whatever they call that thing, the spire. I'll be right back. The needle. I'll be right back on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.